My first instrument was actually, believe it or not, the electric organ. I was walking down the street in Tel Aviv, on the main street, and this guy was playing it in a store. And I had heard the piano, my first grade teacher played it in a music class, but it really didn't turn me on because it was an out-of-tune spinet, just playing silly songs. So when I heard this organ, to me it sounded like a symphony and a big band all rolled up into one. And I ran home and I said, "Mom, you need to get me this thing." So that was my beginning. And then later, I actually fell in love with the piano when I heard some real pianists play. When I started playing, I went to an after-school conservatory. We took lessons. We played some classical, some jazz, some pops. We wrote songs. I was in the Scouts, in a musical troupe in Israel. When I came to the U.S., I was about 12, and I entered a competition. I was coached by this Yamaha teacher that was all about getting you to improvise and getting you to combine jazz and classical. And I actually met one of my mentors there. His name was Joe Harnell. He was a musical director for Peggy Lee and the Michael Douglas Show, but he'd also studied with Nadia Boulanger. So again, there was that combination of classical and jazz. And from there, I just, I got a chance to study a little bit with Claire Fisher, who just passed. He was an inspiration. Billy Childs, different folks. And when I went to school, I went to Eastman School of Music for music composition, classical composition. And then on my summers off, I would go to the World Stage, Billy Higgins' club in LA, and hang out there in jam sessions as much as I can. Learn the music that way. I love teaching. It's one of the things that I do that I love. I love playing, I love writing and arranging, and I love teaching. Been fortunate enough to be invited by Kenny Burrell to teach at UCLA for the last 7 years. And a couple of years ago, I heard about the Herb Alpert School of Music, which was Herb's endowment to combine the jazz and the classical again. And so I presented an idea for a course where the students will write music, and it'll be inspired by anyone from Jobim to Bach, to Benny Golson, to Stravinsky. And, they've been writing, they basically write 2 little pieces a week, and even if they've never written before, I just say, go. I say, what's the shortest amount of time it'll take you to write a 3-minute piece? And the right answer is 3 minutes. I remember a few memories of hearing jazz. My parents were very supportive, but they were not total musicians themselves. They had a store that sold electronic kits, do-it-yourself things like stereo systems and things, and they had Time Out by Dave Brubeck. That was one of the CDs, LPs. And I also remember a teacher giving me a Count Basie CD. And years later, when I joined the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, I was like coming full circle, because here I am, conducted by John, who wrote and played with Count. So that was a real treat. And I also remember hearing Chick Corea do a concert in Israel, as well as Bobby McFerrin. And that blew me away at age 10. Give me 1 second. I got to think about it, because I've never been asked that with that specific thing. I remember there was a funny story. I do remember. I had come back to LA, and I wanted to play jazz, and I actually wanted to do some writing. And I got into a little bit of film scoring, just for student films and things like that. And I had a mentor by the name of Misha Siegel. He was an Israeli pianist and composer, and he sat me down and he said, "What do you really want to do? Do you want to write? Do you want to have people kind of influence the way that you write by having it be a certain style for the movie? Or do you want to go around the world playing your music and playing jazz with other people?" And I said, "That's what I'd love to do." And I came back to LA a couple of years after college, and there was a vocalist who I heard, and I said, "I'm going to play with this vocalist." And we got together, and I presented us to this club. They didn't need a pianist, but they needed a vocalist. But soon enough, the pianist couldn't make it. I started playing with her, with other people. One day, a vocalist came in. Her name was Sandra Booker, and she said, "Listen, I forgot my book, but I'll be right back. Don't worry." She saw I was, younger and maybe didn't know the tunes that she was going to call. I said, "Don't worry about it. Just what do you want to play?" And she said, "Well, how about Our Love Is Here to Stay?" Okay, great. 8-bar intro. We just hooked it up. And we ended up going to Europe and touring and this and that. And later on, she did a gig and invited Jeff Hamilton to come hear her. And I introduced myself to him. He invited me over to his table. And a few months later, when he needed the pianist for his trio, he invited me to join the trio.